Hello and welcome to this very first edition of Open Source in Oman, a monthly series of video interviews brought to you by the Open Source Center of Excellence in Oman, which is a partnership between the Oman Ministry of Transport, Communications and Information Technology and Wipro Limited. I'm your host, Gilles Gravier, Open Source Strategy Advisor at Wipro. Our guest today is Sophie Gautier, who is Foundation Coordinator at the Document Foundation. In her role, she's been very naturally and significantly involved in open source activities, and we'll discuss that in the next 30 or so minutes. So first, I'd like to start with an introduction. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into open source originally?
Well, it's a long journey, which began again 20 years ago. I was living in Burkina Faso and searching for software for some associations, and I found Sophies at this time. It was not free at the moment, but Sun open sourced it under the name of openoffice.org. And I was naturally involved in this community, first helping other users, and then working on localization, and then on quality assurance. And well, I followed the openoffice.org project for a long time. And when we forked to create LibreOffice, and I followed LibreOffice.
Great. Okay, thank you. And here you are now. So what is your main personal motivation for you when it comes to open source activities today? And has that changed over time?
Yes, and at the beginning it was for learning and helping others, and now it's more on the organization side, but still sharing and helping others, and help people gain in skills, become more skilled, and build a community.
Yep. And by the way, I for as long as I've known you doing this, so I understand I understand what it means. How do you I don't know, measure that, or how do you decide that you're actually getting what you're looking for in this?
It's not so easy to answer the question. Well, how do I measure that for me? Is that
Yeah, or how do you decide at the end of the day that yes, I'm doing this for the right reason and I'm happy it's working? Because it's a very internal reason, right? It's what you feel is good. So it's not necessarily easy to measure, I imagine.
No, it's not easy, but as long as you're enthusiastic and people around you are happy, then I guess you can say that your work, you have done your job. And I find that in the LibreOffice community, people are enthusiastic and always willing to try some things, to work on it. And
super, thanks. So in your organization, the Documentation Foundation, can you tell us a little bit more what role open source plays in it?
Open source is everywhere. So we are delivering LibreOffice and the software, and it's only made with open source. Whatever we are doing, documentation, quality assurance, localization, we use open source software everywhere, and we deliver an open source software too. So open source is everywhere.
And do you use the fact that it's all open source in order to achieve objectives of, I don't know, propagation of the software, or sharing knowledge? I don't know.
Do we use open source tools for that?
No, the fact that it is open source. So is open source I understand it's a way of doing things at Documentation Foundation, but what else do you get in terms of benefits because it's open source? And do you have inconvenience because it's open source?
The benefits is everything is accessible for everybody. So our community is very open, and each tool you use is generally well documented. Upstream is reactive. When you have questions, when you have needs, if we have to improve our tools, they are quite reactive, and that's important. Yes.
Are there cases where open source has actually made your software not only more popular, but actually like the way to go? And are there places where open source has actually caused you issues in adoption?
Yes, it may cause issues when the project is not maintained anymore. So the software is not maintained anymore, and or when they are fork. Just I don't know if you have seen the Freenode and Libera chat topic. We have to move very quickly elsewhere. So sometimes it's difficult to manage because we don't have a contract or a moral, only a moral contract. And that's, that's how it works. We accept it.
Forks are a natural thing in the open source world. It's actually
Yes.
a good sign if people fork your project.
Yes, that's it.
So regarding your role today, okay, can you tell us a little bit of how you arrived in that role, and what is the open source specific aspect of it? I understand that your role is all open source, but what makes open source such a strong part of your role, and what makes your role such a strong link to open source, and how did you get to that role today?
So I was part of the team creating the document foundation as a volunteer. But the document foundation expanded quite fast, and I was hired because I guess I quite well know the community and how it works, and specifically to help the LTNN localization community, LTNN community, and help them translate LibreOffice in more and more languages. And I also coordinate several projects and help for the conference, and also on the administrative task of the document foundation.
Okay, we'll talk about localization a little later in the discussion, because there's something I want to ask you around this. So thanks. And so now, are you still involved in localization actually, or do you
Yes,
do more
I'm still
coordination?
involved in. I coordinate, but I also translate in French. Mostly the help. We are two, one working on the UI and me on the files. And, yes, I'm still. I like that.
So it's interesting, by the way, because it points out something that I often say, is that you can actually start contributing to an open source project without knowing how to write a single line of C. Translation, localization is a clear and important way of contributing to an open source project, right?
Yes, actually, because making the software available in your language, even if it's a small language, it's very, very important for that language, for the culture.
Do you know how many languages are supported today in LibreOffice?
I guess a little more than 100, 112.
Okay. And do they cover all of the regions of the planet, or they're like areas that are not covered at all?
Most of the planet, but African language are more difficult to have project.
So I imagine you support left to right and right to left. Do you support up to down also?
Yes,
Wow,
yes, all scripts.
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Mm.
Just as a story, I remember in the old open office days when the Japanese government wanted to support extended Kanji, and they came to Sun at the time and asked, "Can you do it for us? Because Microsoft is going to do it for their version of Office, and it's going to take them until the next release. We'll have to update." And at Sun, I was the one in contact with them, and I told them, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it for you, but you could do it by yourselves. I'm going to help you put the right team together to do that. And and I don't know if you were there. Yeah, you probably were in the project at the time, but do you know? Do you have an idea how long it took the Japanese government to do that?
No,
2.5 months.
yeah,
And of course now the extended Kanji support is still in LibreOffice, right?
yes,
So they did it
yes,
2.5 months, and they only had to pay for funding the developers, and they didn't have to pay for an upgrade or something like that, and now it's there forever.
yes. So I'm not aware they were able to do it by
Yep,
themselves.
yep,
Mm,
absolutely.
that's great.
And
That's
they
great.
donated the work, they contributed the work back to the open office team, so that's why
Mm.
it's in it now. So what is the biggest challenge, or what are the biggest challenges you face today in your role? What helps you resolve them successfully?
So the biggest challenge for me in my role is to drive the community to, for example, we have to move from ask to discourse, changing the tool, or to move from Pootle, which is a tool we use for localization, to Weblate, and make everybody happy with this change.
People don't
It's
like
like,
change.
yeah, like in any migration, they don't like that, and have to make them happy, and that's a big challenge, but it's also a pleasure and a big work, but it's really interesting, and we are doing that. Just right now, we will move to discourse from Ask, and it's another nice thing.
So it's more, is it the technical challenge or is it the
No,
cultural
no,
challenge of getting the
yeah,
technical change adopted?
yeah. Getting the technical change adopted. It's not technical at all. The migration is not difficult, but people are more resistant.
And so do
But
you have tools or do you have methods to actually help, uh, like make this smoother for people, or how do you get them to accept it?
a lot of communication, a lot of transparency makes them part of the process, makes them test and take their feedback into account. It's very important to have them all along the road and listen to them.
Listening is always
Yeah, and
very
be
very
patient.
helpful. Yeah,
Be
absolutely.
very
And
patient.
do you actually have people that joined or start working for the project, and that, like you, it's their first ever contribution to an open source project? Do you have a lot of that?
Yeah, yes, of course. Uh, for example, currently we have students from a French university in France
Hmm.
who didn't find their internship,
Hmm.
and we get them in the project to translate documentation, and they have never heard of an open source project, never
Wow,
find that, and they are, the first experience was in November, and we do it again for June, so they are very happy, and yeah,
that's super. You do realize that you're going to get a lot more internship requests once this video gets published.
I hope so. I hope
Good.
so.
All right. And it's
Really.
nice because it shows a few things. First of all, it confirms that people can start contributing without knowing how to code. It also shows that the LibreOffice project is a great project to start that. And finally, that if people are looking for an internship, it's a great place to start as well.
Yes, exactly.
Are you, you might not have an answer to this one, I don't know, but are you creating specific programs for internship style contributions, or does it just happen
It,
in an ad hoc way?
it depends on what they want to work. If it's on quality assurance, it's a bit specific because they need more leading.
Hmm.
But for documentation, it's an interaction between teachers, students, and us, and there is no need for specific program. So it depends on what, but we are always very happy to have students and work with them.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay, so apart from this specific project that you're heavily involved in, what is your favorite open source project? Do you have another one that you really like that you tell
Yeah,
everybody use this?
not only one,
Okay,
but
the few
several.
ones.
Like I'm not using Fedora, but I really like the open source project. How they manage it, how they reward people, how the same for GNOME, or another one I really like, which is a tool I use for localization, is Omega T.
Cool. Okay. So still in the localization area, huh?
Yeah.
To some extent. Good. Okay. Thanks.
Mm.
Um, as a sort of a conclusion, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, do you actually have an ask for your audience? You know, what could they do to make your open source activities easier, better, more efficient?
Come and join. Come and join the project and give us your enthusiasm and your ideas, what we can do better, what you would like to see happen.
And so I imagine, obviously, in the localization area, but any other areas that LibreOffice needs or is looking for contributions? All of them, I suspect.
Yeah, we always need people, but quality assurance, for example, is a you don't need to know how to code, but it's quite technical, and it's really interesting. You face users and developers, and if you like also design is we have a big design project and a lot of things to do to have a nice and shiny software. So there is a room for improvement also there.
Mhm.
And what else? Documentation, course, and
Any particular language or geographical areas that you're looking for people to contribute in terms of localization or documentation? You mentioned African languages, but any like missing area?
everywhere. We need people from everywhere because uh, uh, the scripts needs always to be enhanced. So the more people are working on the languages, the more the scripts are strong.
Okay.
Mm.
I mean, the activities of the Center of Excellence focus on the area and the country of Oman, but obviously it is going to have an impact in all of the Gulf country region. So maybe something that we could think about, and we'll have to talk about this offline and maybe publish something, but it might be interesting to see if we can create a project or a team or a working group specifically for the Arabic language, unless you tell me, oh, there's already one, in which case we'll have to send an email or post the information.
There is already Arabic consultants, but we can join people and work together.
Is there like a mailing list, or is there a
Yeah,
chat or a
no,
community?
everything. Telegram channel, via chat or lists, what you
Okay,
prefer.
and people can find that on the documentation
Yes,
foundation.
they can drop me a mail also, and I will give them help.
Okay, I'll add your email if you're okay with it on the comments in the YouTube channel.
Of course, yes, no problem.
Perfect, I'll do that. Thanks. One last question then, which I know we talked about a little bit previously, but if somebody were to ask you, how do I start contributing to open source from scratch?
From scratch?
Yeah,
Yes.
where do I start? What do I look at? You know,
So,
what would be your suggestion to them?
Join us on the mailing list or the IRC channel or the Telegram channel or Matrix. What do you prefer? And ping one of us and we will guide you to the documentation. Of course, everything is written in the wiki. You can also go directly to Weblet translation documentation.org if you want to translate, and everywhere you got a contact to contact somebody or a list, and we will welcome you and we will guide you to the right.
So I'll ask you to send me the links to some of these resources so that I can add them to the description in YouTube.
Okay.
So you will see them right under this video. I don't know if metrics will work. My understanding last time I tried is it's blocked by the national firewalls in Oman, but the rest should work, so it should be okay.
Okay, great.
All right. So Sophie, I want to thank you very much. Any last thing you want to say? You know, an idea that pops in your mind? Nope.
No, just be happy and join the group.
Good. Thank you. So thanks, Sophie, for being here on this very first edition.
You're welcome.
It's a very big pleasure to talk to you again, and we after all this time of bumping into each other at conferences, events, chats, things like that. So thank you very much. Have a great end of your day, and I'll be pushing this online very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.